and these big synthy moments come in. So it's really all about that.
Very
Uh,
nice.
yeah, it was great
Over
fun.
60,000 words.
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations. That's
There is
huge.
a small dystopian story in there as well. Because basically, well, what happened, right? I got really inspired by the whole thing, and I started writing a sci-fi book based on this. I mean, it's an insane concept, but it's when I was attending some lectures, one of the presentations was about this mega structure that we inadvertently created as human beings, of this huge global network that we can't switch off or control. And it was discovered by this guy who I completely forget, and he wrote a book about it about 10 years ago, and he called it The Stack. And I was asked in this meeting to feed back on it from a dark ambient perspective. Well, it just sounded like the rise of the machines to me,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the Terminator movie. So I just went into like some dark dystopian place, and from it, started to write this story. So I kind of included that in there as well to kind of show that when you create stuff, it comes out in whatever way it possibly can. Either through a guitar, drum set, keyboard, piano, through a pen, bit of
Hmm.
artwork,
Keyboard.
or through a story. And that's frankly what happened. And I just had to get this stuff out of me.
Mm.
Um, in fact, it was like one giant therapy session, to be fair,
Love it.
lasting 7 years. That's a long
Very long therapy session. Yeah. But
yeah.
you're coming out the other side of it. What are the plans? When do you publish this?
Uh, well, I want to do it soon because if I don't think I will. Um, I I don't know if you found this yourself. If you when you're doing anything creative, the hardest part is actually, well, for want of a better way of saying it, giving birth to it.
Mm.
Because that's literally what you do. You let it out into the world and it starts doing its own thing, and you lose complete control of it ultimately, and
Hmm.
off it goes. And it's a bit
Yeah.
like that with this. I'm not quite prepared to let it out yet. So I'm hoping it's going to be this year, but it might not be for one reason or another. I've tried to get it published, but uh, finding a publisher that would take on something that's quite out there
Hmm.
is quite a challenge. But if there's anybody else watching this that's interested, then let me know because it would be nice to let some of that kind of work be taken on. Um,
Yeah. I
um,
kind of I think personally, because of the gray hair that we share, some gray hair. I fall on the opposite side. I, maybe I was always that way, but I think I used to be uh, release something with care and really think about the everything about it before it gets out there because now it's out there and now you can't really undo it. I agree with that. However, like my younger cousin has just gotten into the music industry. Within the past decade, let's say, it's to me just recently. Um, and his attitude is perfection, and he does a beautiful job, and it's really really amazing stuff, and he's doing quite well off the back of it. However, I still feel like with the age that I've got behind me, I just want to get things together and get it out there because I've missed a whole period of my life where I could have been creative releasing things, and I
yeah,
turned my back on it, or I wasn't able to engage in that way, and now I'm able to again. I'm finding my creative side again, and I just want
yeah.
to just make it and share it. And of course, that's kind of also acknowledging it's not perfection.
Well, exactly. I think that's really important, and it's so nice to hear someone else verbalize that because we're in an age where we seem to want to constantly strive to be perfect. With our machines that we make all around us that deliver. Well, is it perfection? Because they break down for
Mm.
one reason or another. and they're made in our image. So I really don't think perfection truly exists, and I kind of like that because that's what makes us
Yeah.
human, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
as we enter into this world of droids and various other things, which inevitably is going to happen. I, I can't see it stopping. What are we facing? And I think the one thing we can do as creative beings is celebrate our uniqueness.
Mhm.
It's saying, yeah, I am human, I am flawed. Yeah,
This is
that's
it.
what's going to make us. But
And creativity inherently includes imperfection. If you listen to some of the best music from all of the decades prior, you have imperfections that you can spot that make it unique and make it stand out. And it has soul because it has imperfection. And nowadays, everything is so auto tuned and so perfected that I think it's just
yeah.
gotten so monotone robotic that and I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant. We could
No,
shift.
well, I do get it. And actually, I'm a big fan of all music. But I like to celebrate the fact that I'm a human being as well. And eventually, when machines do replace us, perhaps, who knows? I mean, I can't call that one. They'll have their own music, and that's fine. But I
Yeah,
like,
I like the recent memes with we created AI and automation for the wrong purpose, right? I want it to do my menial tasks. I don't want it to be creative for me. All right, let's shift and let me take you. I've got a couple of different directions I could go from here. Let's hold on to books and things you're working on because I know you're interested in working on a Mikkey Dee book. But let's shelve that, put a pin in it, and come back. Let's instead go down the dark ambient side and your synthy side, and let's talk about your other project, which is NSS 58. Do I have the number right?
yes, the NSS 58 project. Yeah.
Tell me about this. So this was a group, but at the moment it's a solo project. This is the group coalesced around you, and you've carried it forward.
Well, it's my version of Dave Brock, really, of Hawkwind. The truth about Hawkwind is, I think well, and I know Dave said this somewhere, he wrote it down, that it's never really been a band. It's been an amalgamation of passing travellers. And that's very much like the NSS 58 project. Um, it's, how can I best describe it? Um, it it comes and it goes. I start something new, thinking, oh, this is going to be a new band, and inevitably it ends up back being released under the moniker of NSS 58. So I've kind of learned to live with it, and it's been in existence since 2002, 2004. With the first release taking about 6 years. There was an EP before that, but that never really. Um, I think I did about 10 copies of it, and I think I've still got one of it. And then it sort of grew from there, and I did an MA, and that ended up being released under the NSS 58 with the music. It was basically an exploration. Oh, well, it became this book actually. Where is it? Uh, hang on. This thing. This book was basically my master's degree in exploring heavy metal and progressive rock drumming. And I performed it and then released it as an album, and it kind of got signed to something. And then I thought, oh, I like this. Actually, this is all right. And I started writing my own stuff, but it just went off in all sorts of different directions that I never anticipated. So we've got jazz in there, minimalist classical music, uh, prog, electronica, Afro dance. I mean, it just went all over the place, really. It took me to Italy for a recording session with a guy who'd done work with some Peter Gabriel's band members, which is really cool. And then I got involved with some other people around that as well, and they did some work on it. One of them was a guy who tours over here quite regularly with a tribute band called Mr. Punch. And he's the singer, and he sang on one of the tracks, which was really cool. And this is sort of before his band. I think he's also in a band called Gollum, who are quite big in Italy, and they're very proggy. But he had a great voice, so he ended up doing something, and it just kind of went here, there, and everywhere, and it just kept going. And then all the dark ambient stuff started to creep in when I started my PhD, and it just grew from there, really. Um, so I was sort of exploring creating original synth sounds as well, and then in that experimental process and the sort of influence of my supervisor Sean Albiez and Brian Eno, it sort of went off in all sorts of different places again. And it sort of ended up sounding a bit like Tangerine Dream fused with Sun-O, Nine Inch Nails. You know, it was all in there because I was listening to all these acts, fell in love with Nine Inch Nails. And it just kind of, it was just a really amazing journey. But that was like mapping it in sound, if you like, really. And then the last thing that came out was Nebula. And that was the conclusion of that dark ambient phase. Which took me to France, working with a guy called James Sanger, who's worked with all sorts of people. He actually did some stuff with Eno, which was really cool. But he was a really nice guy, and I had a month of artist development, of which I spent a month playing with this really cool synth, and it was like the music from that became the album. And it sounds very much like a fusion of Hawkwind and a lot of late 60s, early 70s Germanic rock. I don't like to call it krautrock. I think that's quite offensive to people in Germany. You know, it was a label they had for years, and then all of a sudden, hang on, this is not right. Call saying that. So I think they call it the sort of Berlin school now, and it sort of ended up sounding like that. So that's the conclusion of the dark ambient, but that's not to say that more might not manifest.
You have a hope to write another book about a Motorhead drummer, and that would be Mikkey Dee.